Hi, everyone. Welcome to Love in the Time of Corona. All right, I see a lot of people are still in the waiting room, so we'll give them a couple more minutes. But while people trickle in, I'm Yola Robert. I am the host of the I Suck at Life podcast, and today we have a very, very special live recording and live podcast of Love in the Time of Corona with Coven magazine and Bumble. Alongside Bumble, we also have dating coach Carla Romo on and the VP of Community at Bumble, Georgia Mavrukas. So thank you both for coming on. This is such an important topic. I have to say, I love Bumble. I never got into any other dating app. I always stuck to Bumble. And when I first moved to LA, it was how I met people. Bumble BFF, Bumble Biz, Bumble Dating. And I actually, funny story, my boyfriend and I, he used to be my physical therapist. I went to one physical therapy session with him. And this was 4 years ago. And then totally forgot about him. I probably would have never re-met him, but I moved closer to where his location was and we reconnected on Bumble, and now we're probably getting married. So I so attribute like our relationship to Bumble and everything, my whole future to Bumble, and our future kids will know that we met on Bumble. So it is such an honor to be partnering with you guys on this. And Carla, I always use Carla for my relationship and dating stories on the Zoe Report. If you guys follow my writing work, I've covered quite a bit about dating during the pandemic. I've had not only Carla jump in and help others navigate this, but I've also had Harvard Medical School doctors and researchers who are on the front lines of the pandemic, kind of suggesting how to go about it safely as well. So before we get started, I'm just gonna let you guys give a little spiel about yourself. I know I introduced you, but Georgia, tell me about yourself and how long you've been at Bumble.
Well, first I want to say I love a good success story, Yola. So we are looking forward to hearing about how this turns out for you. So I'm the VP of Community Marketing at Bumble, and I basically lead the community marketing team, which consists of all of our on-the-ground community marketing efforts across the United States. So if you think about it, it's Bumble's ambassador program here in the US. So all of our college ambassador programs, localized city marketing strategy, execution, and out-of-the-box experiential opportunities in key markets.
Amazing. And for someone who isn't familiar with the app, I know millions or a billion people have downloaded it. Is that correct?
We have millions of people across, the globe.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for those that might have not used it yet or aren't familiar, how do you describe Bumble to someone?
The way we like to describe it is we are a women-first social networking app. And basically we help people make safe and equitable connections across our 3 platforms. One is for dating, which is Bumble Date. One is for friendship finding, so Bumble BFF. And then of course, business networking, which is Bumble Biz.
Amazing. And for those like women right now who are looking to join Bumble and they're a little nervous to maybe make the first move, what advice do you have for them?
I think, if you think about it, I would say, I think in general right now, online dating has been normalized for quite some time, right? So we find that 30% of American adults are using dating apps to find love. And we wanted to change the gender dynamic. And so what I would say is, there's plenty of different ways, especially right now, that you can sort of make the first move. There's a couple of different things that we've done. So if you think about it, we've actually, in this pandemic, it's a little bit different, but we've got a whole bunch of different things that you can go on and do, whether it be just going on and having using our conversation starters, right? And so what that does is, in case you get a little bit nervous, you can actually have conversation starters that are there for you. We just want to empower women to still feel connected, and we want them to just feel empowered to still make the first move, especially during this time where they're feeling like, potentially that they still want to meet those connections across the different platforms.
It's amazing. And Carla, you've been a dating coach and relationship coach for about 3 years now. You've written books. You even have a course on dating during COVID, which I love that, because I think when the pandemic first hit, people who were in the middle of dating or had just gotten started were like, whoa, what do I do now? But tell everyone a little bit more about yourself and how you came up with your course.
Yeah, everybody always asks, how does one become a dating and relationship coach, which is a good question because I don't think there's that many out there. Long story short, I went through a lot of my own highs and lows in relationships and dating, lots of toxic relationships, codependent relationships. It wasn't until my early 20s where I was in an abusive relationship, and I just saw two paths in front of me. It was continue down this path of self-sabotage, picking partners and making it as a choice to pick partners who don't treat me well, doing that over and over again, or it was stepping into the relationship with myself, learning what self-love, self-care is, learning what red flags are, boundaries, communication when it came to dating and relationships, what I actually want, right? My needs, my wants, those types of things. So I actually ended that relationship. And as I say, I begun the most important relationship that I have today, and that's the relationship with myself. And from there, I thought, I can't be the only one who has ever gone through something like this or struggled with dating and relationships. And turns out I was not. So if you're listening and like, yeah, okay, I get you. You're not alone. And that's where I just decided, I was like, you know what? I want to be able to help women, whether it's dating, breakup, relationships, find purpose and confidence in their love life. And so out of that, I've created different courses around helping women really connect to dating and self-love and empowerment. I've hosted different events around that. I've written a book, Contagious Love, Break Free from Codependency for Damn Good. And I also coach clients one-on-one.
And what inspired you or made you think, okay, I have to create a dating course around dating during this pandemic?
It's hard. I mean, to say, oh, it's easy to date during this time would be a total lie. It is extremely difficult. And dating is hard within itself. And then to add a global traumatic event, right, like COVID, to the mix, it can make things really confusing and feel really lonely and isolating, especially if you're single and you're trying to navigate this world. So I was seeing a lot of my clients struggling in this space. But the thing is that I've also had clients find amazing success on dating apps during this time as well and get into relationships. So it's this mixture of our own thoughts that hold us back from really dating during this time, but to know that that's just our thoughts and that there is proof in being able to date and find success during COVID.
That is such a good point. And a lot of people have gone to apps like Bumble and different sites to kind of explore that. And Georgia, do you think that the stigma around dating apps has kind of lessened because of the pandemic? Because, this is your only option. You can't meet anyone at a bar anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said before, I think it's been normalized for quite some time.
Right.
But given the current circumstances, of course, I do think that people's reception to it has shifted quite a bit. People are much more open to, going on virtual dates during the initial stages of their relationship. For example, instead of, exchanging a few messages and then going out to either grab a bite to eat or for a drink, people are actually having video chats now, making sure that, before they meet up, that actually they want to make sure that they meet up with that person. And so having some more sort of interaction, I would say, initially before that either meetup or even before that video chat is something that we're finding a lot more, to be honest.
So what advice do you have for, I think a lot of women, and I struggled with this a lot, I was just going back and forth, having these like very surface conversations, just messaging on the app, and I could never get it to like a deeper point. And now you guys have the video feature. So what advice do you have to kind of take that conversation to the next level and eventually progress to a video date?
So I think, it depends. So there's a couple of different things that you can do. So, as you're looking at different profiles and sort of when you get your boom, you're both matched up, and you make that first move initially, I think initially sort of talking about the things that you find interesting in that person or asking a couple of open-ended questions, I think is really important to get that started. And then I really think, we've got, video chat or video call now. And so with either of those, the great news about video chat or video call is you don't actually have to exchange your personal information. So you can actually get on a video with somebody without actually giving them your phone number or your, FaceTime info, or you can chat with them, via a call as well without giving them your personal information. So I like that keeps it safe. And so I do think, just trying that out a little bit just to make sure you want to actually take that next step, especially now, is probably a lot more important now than ever before.
I agree. And Carla, you're the expert. So how would you bring that up? Like, I'm talking to this guy, we've been having great conversation. How would I ask him? I think right now more than ever, and especially with apps like Bumble empowering women to make the first move, you don't have to wait for the guy to ask you, right? Like, you can
right. 100%.
Exactly. So
yes.
how would I, or how would, so many of the people viewing and listening, how would you suggest they open that conversation to have a video call or have a video chat on Bumble?
Yeah, I'm all for calling out the awkwardness, right? Because it is awkward, like to be like, okay, it's COVID, so we're not gonna go meet up, but what do you want to do? Well, right? And I think just being straightforward and being playful with it, right? You don't have to be so serious about dating right now in the sense of, okay, like this is what I need to say because this is the line that works. Like, forget all of that. Forget the rules, right? Whatever rules those are, and really just call it out. Hey, like, I know COVID's happening, bummer, right? Like, make it silly and like, ugh, I know it's just like such a drag, whatever. And then just say, would you be open for having a virtual drink? And then right there, you can say that, let that go, and see what the person responds. And I've had my clients use it, so I know it works. And guys love it. They love it. And then they are like, okay, yeah, let's do a virtual drink. And then if you really want him to lead or whatnot, then you can kind of see if he'll, make the plan, solidify it from there. But call it like it is. Talk about the awkwardness of it and just have fun.
I think that's so important. Have fun with it, because so many times it's like you get so caught up in the strat, like the little details of everything. Like, oh, is he gonna think I'm weird, or is it too forward, or is it what, And the great thing about Bumble is there are so many fish in the sea. Like, if your video date doesn't pan out, I'm sure there's not a million, but like based on your location, thousands of other guys that are willing to do that with you, or women. So I totally, that's key. Like, have fun with it. So Georgia, there's, back when things were open, there was a common saying, and I know some dating coaches like to tell their clients also, go to the places that your potential partner would hang out, right? So how can you evolve that strategy or that mindset into using Bumble?
I think you guys were talking about it before, right? Which is like location. So obviously Bumble is a location-based app. And what that means is you've got a potential to get your pool however sort of far out you want to go. So normally our distance filter is set to 50 miles. I know when I was talking to my sister in New York City, she's like, actually, during the pandemic now, I don't want to go out that far anymore. I don't want to get onto public transportation. So she's actually able to set it, in a certain mile radius where she feels comfortable even traveling. The other thing, it's actually really interesting. We found that this really interesting trend in the UK has emerged, and it's called loc dating. Because it's loc dating, yes. And it basically is a trend where people are actually similar to my sister, trying to change their location in order to be within 1 to 2 miles radius, of their, 1 to 2 miles radius of themselves at the time. And so if you gravitate to people who are within close proximity to you and want someone who can, bond over similar, maybe local establishments, local experiences, local dating may be the way to go. If you are actually more open or live in a location where you aren't like in New York City, it isn't as dense, you can go as far out as you want if you're willing to get in the car, et cetera. And so I think having the ability to sort of choose that from the onset is really important.
I didn't know that's what it was called. So I technically met my boyfriend doing loc dating. I'm going to tell him, I'm like, did you know we were loc dating? Because we had both set our radius. I set mine to half a mile, I think, or a mile, wow, as low as it could go. Because I was so tired of, because in LA, like they always joke that I live on the west, like I live by the beach now. So trying to date someone in Silver Lake was basically, I was trying to date someone in SF. Like it was the same distance to take a flight to SF than to go to Silver Lake. So I did the loc dating. That's awesome. And yeah. So speaking of which, Carla, a lot of schools and states have each, obviously, state or county even has a different restriction on what's open and what's not. For a lot of women, a lot of college women are back now. They're either doing hybrid or even if they're doing virtual, they're still back on campus. How can college women safely do first dates without having to go over to someone's apartment or dorm? Because I know people are still suggesting come over and we'll do 6 feet apart in the apartment or dorm. So how can you suggest maybe doing a picnic or doing an outdoor coffee or social distance hike?
Yeah, I think right now is the time to get creative. Like I said earlier, it's like having fun, right? And so you can do different activities like going for a picnic, or if you really aren't sure and it's like the first time and you're like, I don't really feel comfortable yet meeting up with them. I don't know how they've been socially, distancing, that kind of thing. You guys could do a takeout from a restaurant that you guys both like and then order, and then he gets his and you get yours or she gets hers, right? And then you guys are able to enjoy the meal together and have this virtual dinner, right? Or if somebody, wants to deliver something else, I don't know, maybe it's ice cream. You guys just have kind of a little ice cream date. Another thing as well is going for a coffee and walk. So a lot of times you want to go to a coffee shop, you sit there and you chat. But if you go and get coffee to go, and then you guys can just go for a walk outside, and also having the conversation, what do you feel comfortable with, right? Do we wear our masks? Do we not wear a mask? Do we pull the mask down real quick to say hi, put it back on? I know a lot of people who are in New York City, that's really not a possibility just to take your mask off and walk around. Whereas other places, maybe your college campus, I don't know what the rules are there, but it's okay to take the mask off, have a picnic, put it back on, that kind of thing. So it's just a way to get creative. And it's if you do want them to come over, be safe about that, right? Maybe have a conversation ahead of time, be playful, be silly about it, but be smart at the same time, because you don't want to get infected or infect someone else.
Right. And I definitely check your CDC guidelines to make sure Absolutely. you're within, you're following that. But I think a lot of women might feel pressure to, if someone's inviting them over, they don't want to get rejected. So what's a easy way to still seem interested to hang out with a person, but to do it outside or in a socially distanced, safe way?
Yeah, well, I think, if you want to see the person and meet up, it's okay to say, hey, thanks so much for inviting me over. Appreciate it. I really want to get together with you. And then go in for your ask, right? So compliment them, tell them you're still interested, and then go into what it is that makes you feel comfortable. You don't even need to go into detail. Keep it simple. Just say, hey, are you okay if we just go for a walk and get coffee? Are you okay if we just kind of sit outside and hang out and just chat, or go for this hike? And a red flag would be if the person pushes back and says no. So just a side note there.
Very good. Yeah, because then they're never going to respect your boundaries at any point of the relationship. So
exactly.
Georgia, let's say they have a successful Bumble video call and video or Bumble call, video call, and actual video date. How do you suggest they move that conversation off the app?
So, like we said before, I think once you sort of understand video chat or video call and you've got those, that relationship going and you want to go to the next place, I think Carla covered it really well. I mean, when you decide to meet somebody IRL, we always encourage people to meet in a public place rather than meeting in somebody's apartment or a dorm room, especially in the beginning. And I always follow the girl code of always making sure you tell a friend. I think it's incredibly important to always let somebody know where you are, even if it is in a public place. Not just during a pandemic, but just in general, I would say. I also want to remind people that it's incredibly important to, if you feel uncomfortable in a date too, politely leave the date. You do not have to stay there if you don't feel comfortable in that setting. And so put yourself first and remember to do that. But I would say, following exactly what Carla said. So just in terms of making sure you're meeting people outside, there's so many different things you can do. You can go for hiking, you can go for a walk, you can, out here in Austin, Texas, you can go kayaking together, doing things that are sort of socially distanced, but still relatively fun, and just going out and enjoying nature as much as you can right now.
Absolutely. And also, if you feel uncomfortable on the app, you can always unmatch people. I called it being the Bumble police. I would do it for my friends. If a guy was being not nice to my friends, I would go through and unmatch them. So you can always do that.
And
too.
if they're being really, really, inappropriate, like you can also report them as well. So it's one thing if, obviously it's just not the right fit and you can unmatch them, but it's another thing too. We want to make sure that people on our app feel incredibly safe using the app. So if there's somebody who just completely, disrespects you in a certain way, you can certainly raise that to us, and we take that very seriously.
And I've had guys blocked as well because of that. Mm-hmm. I love what you guys did, what Whitney did regarding unwanted pics. Yes. So major props to Bumble for that. Carla, what patterns have you seen from your clients on how to date successfully during this pandemic? And what are some great I don't want to say case studies, but great examples that you've seen, because you've mentioned earlier that people have had great success during the pandemic. And maybe I feel like a lot of people might be like, what's the point of even dating right now? I'm not going to find anyone. So can you share any of those examples or insights that you found?
So one of the patterns that I've seen a lot of my clients go through, I have a client and she hit something that I coined as the term dating burnout. So you're on the apps, you're exhausted because you're on them all the time, to the point where it's like, it's just your go-to, right? And you just go, and you don't stop. You're not having any luck. It feels exhausting. Somebody talks to you and you're like, great, are you going to just stand me up again? Are you going to ghost me, right? It's like this mentality. So I would say one of the best things to do is actually take a step back. And don't delete the app, because I see that a lot, right? You get annoyed, delete the app. Maybe you give yourself a few weeks, maybe even a day, and then you're like, oh, I kind of want somebody. You're back on the app, and then it's just the same cycle. So what I would say is create a schedule for yourself. So stay on the app, but back off a bit. And so kind of like your class schedule, create something like that. So like maybe Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, you go on the app for only, I don't know, during your lunchtime. And then that's it. Go live your life and enjoy college, right? Like go hang out with your girlfriends, have fun, do whatever it is that you do, right? But I also have had success around clients who hit dating burnout and were able to actually find love during the pandemic being on dating apps, right? So one of my clients, this is my favorite story, she and her partner, they're together. They're even now talking about moving in together. It was the very start of the pandemic. And they met on the app, they matched, and she was like, I don't know, we'll see how it goes. So they virtually met, and then they finally were like, okay, we're gonna meet in person, we're just gonna be safe about it, and instantly clicked. They were like, this is amazing. And so she knows, okay, yes, I'm in a pandemic, so I want to take it slow. But in order to feel safe around COVID, they decided, they were like, you know what, like, we're just going to quarantine in the sense of like seeing each other together, especially because it was the early stages of COVID. And so they were like, we're not going to call it official. We're not going to run in and see each other every single day, but we're going to just make sure that we keep our own little bubble. So they had this conversation, which I think brings intimacy on an emotional level early on into a relationship that you don't always get to have maybe when COVID isn't happening. So they got to have this hard conversation about what that looks like for them. And then over time, they built this relationship together, and now they're together and they are boyfriend and girlfriend, and he's been able to meet her family and whatnot. So it is possible to have love during COVID and to meet somebody from a dating app, and it might not look the same way as you expect, but it's not impossible. So I would say hang in there. Yes, acknowledge that it gets frustrating, but make the app work for you. Don't worry about working for the app.
Yeah, and just to add to that, what I would say too is like making sure that your profile is fully filled out is incredibly important, and making sure that like your profile badges and your filters and all of that, because that can actually be used to establish, you know, the common values that you have with somebody. So that way you have success stories like what Carla was saying. You know, having that like connection, like being able to actually see something about someone and being really intentional about the type of person that you're looking for and about putting yourself out there. I think that really helps just establish that like really strong connection during this time. So that's what I would add to that.
Yeah, I'm sure, Carla, you're like the queen, I know, of making sure everyone's profile is looking up to date. So yes.
You know it.
There is, and we've talked about this a lot, Carla, and it's kind of a sensitive subject because I feel like getting tested for COVID is something that a lot of people have on the top of their mind, especially if they're meeting someone new and they're coming from different circles or, you know, different pods, you know, and how do you ask a potential partner to get tested and ask if they've been safe? Because I've seen that a lot of people aren't working out because one partner is not staying within a pod and staying, you know, taking as much precaution maybe as the other partner. And that's why it doesn't work. Not because they're not technically quote unquote compatible, because they're not COVID compatible, I should say, you know. So how do you ask that, and how can you, what's a creative way to do it together maybe?
Yeah, and full disclaimer, the way I look at this around getting tested for COVID, if you get tested for STDs, like why wouldn't you get tested for COVID, right? Like just kind of similar type of thing. So my whole approach to this is keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it, but share to the person like, hey, look, like I really like want to meet up and I'm excited and I'm super interested in you, but it would make me feel really comfortable if you had gotten tested, right? If they've expressed they haven't yet. You could also just ask, hey, what are your thoughts on getting tested for COVID before we meet up? And then have them talk about it and make it a conversation. That's the thing, is you want this to feel like a conversation. You don't want to feel like you're like chasing them down, like you better get tested or, you know, we're not going to meet up. It should never feel like that, because that would be a power dynamic struggle right there that you'd be creating in a relationship or at the beginning of a relationship. But what I think is best is to make it conversational. So bring it up, how you feel about it, talk about it from your side of things. I also know that there's great resources online that you can use to get an at-home test kit. That if you have insurance, super simple, and if the insurance doesn't cover the rest, the government will. It gets mailed to you pretty much the next day. You take a swab, you send it back via FedEx. The next day you have your results. So it's really simple to get tested. And I think, you know, just taking away the stigma that there's something wrong with you, or I'm not going to be interested if you test positive, that kind of thing. Just take that all away and just have a conversation about it and keep it really simple.
Yeah, I think it's super important. And being honest as well, on both sides, you know, keeping that open line of communication, because no one can read your mind on what you want out of that potential partner as well. So
And that's
Georgia,
the way you're
yeah.
starting the relationship, right? I mean, so if you're starting the relationship in that way, I think having that trust and respect up front, and having that clear line of communication open is okay, because that's just the first of many conversations that you're going to have with this individual on things that you agree, disagree. And so why not start right up front?
So speaking of healthy relationships and starting, I think healthy relationships start from on Bumble, like even on Bumble, on the app, through the way you communicate. So what are some important boundaries, Georgia, for you, from your perspective, to start a healthy relationship, even when it's just messaging on an app, on Bumble?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. I think one, like I said before, I think having your profile up is incredibly important, because it'll talk about to somebody else about the things that are important to you. So right off the bat, at least that's setting the foundation and the groundwork of what's important to you as an individual. And then if they're sort of either aligned or if they're just, valuing that from you, then that starts the conversation. I would say the boundaries I have in terms of conversation starters are, one is like, keep it open, keep it light, keep it honest. I think, just understanding like, what are those initial topics that are really important to you, but not so heavy at first, right? Like just having those like light conversations that, can you keep the conversation going with somebody? Is it easy? Do you guys understand each other? Do you see the sense of humor through the chats, et cetera? I think some of that stuff up front is really important. And that's why oftentimes people feel very uncomfortable. That's why we actually started conversation starters. So you can actually go in there. And recently we have an emoji that now just launched actually in the US. So you can actually go onto somebody's profile and like click the emoji in a certain section of their profile so they can know what resonated with you, which again can help sort of the conversation keep flowing there. I would say that, right? So keep it light, keep it fun, get to know each other, then move to the next step of like the virtual chat, because I think that's important before you actually like spend the time to take the test, meet in person, etc.
I love that emoji feature. Because then okay, this person really cares about my political view or my religion or a hobby, and then you can, there's a foundation there before you get too deep. And Carla, you've obviously helped just, define self-love to so many people, and you've written Contagious Love. What are some really important boundaries or foundations that you see for healthy relationships, maybe moving off of the app when you in that first in between stage before like you're official but you're dating?
So I always look at self-love and self-care as like beyond the hashtag. Okay. It's beyond the like facial and getting your nails done, but it's really how you speak to yourself and how you show up for yourself. So one of the ways to do that is when you're starting to get to know somebody. It's so easy when you have like the adrenaline and your hormones just to like kind of put your life on pause and go hang out with this person all the time, or kind of stop like doing the things that, your schedule, getting that all mixed up. So I would say stick to your routine, stick to your schedule, right? Even if you're excited to hang out and you're like, oh, I have to wake up early, I've got a project due, I've got class, like it's not going to work. And you're just kind of going back and forth. Do I, tell him, okay, fine, like let's get together, or do I wait and just reschedule? I'd say reschedule. Stick to like the things that keep you grounded as a person, right? Your own individual self. And going off of that as well, I think it's really important that you get clear on what you want and need in a relationship, so then that you can communicate that to the other person. A lot of times we don't really stop and think about what our needs are, what our wants are, what our deal breakers are. And in order to know ourselves, we got to know that. But in order to get to know somebody else and make sure that they're right for us, we've got to know that about us. So if you know your deal breaker is somebody who smokes and you just don't like that, but you're like, oh, he's so cute, but he said this and he's nice, but he said he's trying to quit, right? Like convincing yourself, I always say it's like painting red flags green. It's really honoring yourself and saying, look, he's a really awesome guy, but this is my deal breaker. And right now, today, he is still smoking. He says he might quit, but that's in the future. So I have to take him at face value today. So it's really just honoring yourself about what you want and sticking to those boundaries.
That's so, like, you hit the nail on the head with that, because I don't know how many times I would settle for things, or I would try to romanticize, okay, well, he is gonna, the smoking thing was a thing. I've had that, it was kind of like I didn't prefer it, but I was like, you know what? He's perfect everywhere else. And it blinded me from seeing like what the relationship was, because I was so fixated on trying to make that one thing that I wasn't okay with okay. So that's so important. And before I met my boyfriend on Bumble, I did what you mentioned. I wrote down what my ideal relationship would look like and what I didn't like from past relationships, and qualities I would want in a new, like, not perfect relationship, but like an ideal healthy relationship. And a month later, I met my boyfriend. I don't know if that's manifestation or whatever you want to call it, but Bumble mixed with manifestation. That's what it was. So
but think about it too. I think, when you first started talking to him, you probably brought your authentic self there. And I think having that self-love is going to enable you to bring your whole authentic self into that relationship from the start. And we actually encourage that. We encourage you to be as whole as you possibly can be in those relationships, because, it's if you're looking to connect, that's going to make that connection authentic.
And I also think one of my favorite sayings as well is just from this perspective of, do they fit into my life? Not do I fit into their life?
Very true. Yeah. A lot of times we try to fit a square into wait, is it a square, a hole and a round? No.
Round hole with a square peg.
Thank you, Georgia.
Gotcha.
I went backwards on that one. We have so many great questions from our attendees. I am going to get straight into them. Carla, this one's for you. What are some COVID-related red flags when it comes to dating? I know you had just touched upon, just our personal own red flags, but what are some COVID-related red flags?
I think some red flags around this, right, is one, do they respect your boundaries? So when you suggest to meet in public and they're like, no, come over. Red flag right there, okay? Like, why can't they meet in public, right? And at the end of the day, that kind of usually means that they want sex or something sexual out of it. So I would say that's a hard red flag. Another one would be just not respecting the conversation that you had in regards to keeping a distance, whether you guys are gonna hug, not hug, keep your masks on, that kind of thing. Another would be criticizing, if you guys are out together, they're criticizing, talking about other people in the sense of, oh, it's so stupid, these people, like making fun of the, guidelines around wearing your masks, that kind of thing. Another red flag would be somebody who's just out and about, doesn't care, is just like hanging out, going to parties, that type of thing, because that kind of shows that they maybe don't have their own boundaries for themselves. So those are just some things to think about around COVID and dating. And don't stress yourself out. Don't look. I always tell clients, do not look for the red flags, okay? Because you'll drive yourself nuts. Is this a red flag? Is that? But if you start to see something, go with your gut. I always say, follow your damn gut. It does not lie. So if something feels off, it probably is.
This next one I love. And I know Bumble has been doing so much around encouraging people to vote. So this question, how can I ask a potential partner if they're going to vote without sounding like too political or judgmental?
So the good news is we've actually got a voter badge. So where people can actually indicate whether they're a voter, a non-voter on their profile. So that way it's easier to identify who is a voter if that actually is important to you versus if it isn't important to you. We also have the questions game. So you can actually get to know a match better by answering mutual questions to the questions game. So we actually recently added some questions, just given the fact that this is, a big year for voting in politics, et cetera, because we know it's something that everyone is top of mind right now. And of course, on social, if you do vote, we started the voting is hot, fun little thing that you can put. So as soon as you vote, voting is hot. But I do think it's actually very important. If voting is important to you, I would say use the badge and use it to actually make sure that others know that it's important to you as well.
And Carla, how do you have that conversation maybe about, okay, they vote, but you want to know more, if it's not through the question game and you're just messaging, how can you bring up like, what are your thoughts on this or that? Or, I think it is really healthy to have, it's okay to have different opinions and date someone who maybe isn't the same as you. But how do you have a conversation like that without coming off like you think their choice or their thoughts on a certain candidate is wrong?
Right. And I think a lot of times actually politics comes down to our own values and our morals, and values are really the foundation of what shapes us as people. So it is important, right? At the end of the day, whether somebody has the same type of values as you. So I would say having a conversation with somebody around the politics question, it is uncomfortable. Politics is uncomfortable for everybody. But if you're serious about getting in a relationship and wanting to possibly or potentially even consider this person as your future, right? It is important to have that conversation and to do it just really chill, right? Like you could just be like, hey, I saw you got the badge, the voting badge. Awesome. Like, who's your candidate? Right. And like put a smiley emoji. And then from there you can kind of ask, oh, cool. Like what about them made you want to vote for them? Because a lot of times, even if you're voting for one candidate and the other person's voting for the same candidate, you actually could have different ideas around the things that you like and don't like, right? And so I think being able to hear what their values are, really listening for the values, not just their opinions, but do they have the same values as me? I think that's going to be really key to deciding, okay, can I vibe with this person or not?
Very true. I mean, this year is like such a year to where you can figure out very quickly if this person's going to be with you long term or not. So very true. Okay, this is a great question from a group of women at UNC. What do we do if classes are entirely digital, but there's a guy we think is cool on a digital lecture? Carla, do you?
All right, I'll jump in. I didn't know Georgia wanted to answer that one or what. So it's kind of like going to the bar with your girlfriends, or you're out and about at like some activity, and you see the cute guy and your friend like either wing women's or like your like girlfriends are like, all right, we got you, like rooting for you, like I'm gonna go say hi, right? Same type of idea. So you could just approach it, like message them privately over, digitally, and just be like, hey, like, and you could say something funny, right? Something about the course, or it's almost like the pickup line, right? So it's like, say something funny about the course or make a joke of like something that happened. Or if it's really boring, you'd be like, are you falling asleep? I like, making a joke about that. So having fun, being playful, and you know what, if they're not interested, that's okay. At least you learned from it. But if they are interested, oh my gosh, amazing. Thank God that you actually put yourself out there to talk to them, because now you have somebody that you're potentially going to date, right? So I would say you have nothing to lose at that point from reaching out.
But is it weird if, this is second part of the question, if they don't live in the same place as you right now?
Okay, so they're like virtual somewhere else.
Right.
Okay. So I would say no, because at the end of the day, like you never know where something could go. So you could still have like a conversation. Oh, I know you're over here. Cool. Like maybe we can FaceTime and chat or whatever it is. I don't think that there's anything wrong unless you're so against talking to somebody who is, in a different location. Fine. Okay. But that's your preference. But if you're open to it, go for it.
I think you could also suggest like a virtual study date for the class, right?
Ooh, I like that. Yes.
Right? Or like, hey,
yes.
Like, do you want to study? Right, yeah, exactly. For your online line. I think that would be my pickup line. Be like, hey, like, would you want to do like a Zoom study date or help study for this exam or paper or whatever? And then you can really see if you want to continue. This is an interesting question because it's kind of backwards from what we've been talking about. If I'm comfortable going on a physical date or meeting someone in person, how do I communicate that to a partner if maybe I'm unsure if they aren't? I don't want them to think badly of me or think that I'm trying to put them in a risky situation.
Yeah. So I can answer from a Bumble perspective in terms of, again, we're trying to do badges for everything. So that way it's easier for you not to have that conversation like immediately, like people can actually know where you stand. So we've got the virtual dating badge now, and it allows that Bumble community to actually further indicate what kind of comfort level you have, right? So is it just virtual? Is it socially distanced? Is it socially distanced with a mask? And so that means that once you add one of that to your Bumble profile, you can easily filter and find people and connect in that way. So if you feel like, you only want somebody who's ready for virtual right now because you aren't comfortable with that, then you can filter that way. And so we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to just be able to find the same sort of connection with other people that are comfortable.
This is amazing. In between all the badges, are you finding people are finding even more accurate and more succinct matches since you've implemented all of these tools?
Yeah, I think they are for sure. And actually, statistically speaking, if you look at just pre-COVID and post-COVID, video chat has gone up 70%. So people are actually wanting to actually video chat. They're not ready to give their information out. They want to see people live. And then virtual chat has, the average, I believe, is about 30 minutes long, the conversations. So, I think people are starting to really want to connect. It's hard. I mean, it's a pandemic, so I think people are longing for connection. We do anyway as humans, right? So I think what we're trying to do from a Bumble perspective is just make it as easy as possible to find those that can connect with you.
Okay, so just get on Bumble and they do everything else for you.
Done.
Carla, this question's for you. Like social media, have you ever given friends, or do you suggest to clients to give friends their passwords to their dating apps if you're on them too much?
I love this. I would say, what is stopping you, right, from your own boundaries of like controlling if you're on it too much? I think that is the key. So yes, you could give your friends your passwords and have them, do whatever for you. But if you find something within yourself, right, that's like blocking you from stopping getting on them all the time or whatever it is, I'd say that's the route that you want to get specific on. So ask yourself, what is stopping me, right? Like, why am I continuously doing this? Where is that coming from? And then you get to learn more about yourself, right? And that's where you can start to change those patterns and get to the root of it. But if you don't want to get to the root of it, sure, give your friend a password.
Okay, and so I'm trying to figure out this question. So this might be a double-sided question. What if you're on it too much? Because Georgia, I don't know if this term has been coined yet, Bumble fingers. No? Okay.
No, but I'm going to write it down and write
it down, because my friends and I, we would call it Bumble fingers when we would like get, our fingers would just end up going like this so much. Left, right, to where our thumbs were numb, and Bumble would tell us you've run out of matches for today. So in that case, Carla, should you also give your friends your password so you can do other things like eat or shower?
Yeah, I mean, you could, right? But once again, what is like the addiction, right? Like, what's keeping you going and going and going? So yeah, I mean, of course you can do that, but I think also finding balance in your life, right? Going back into self-care and self-love, like that is important, and that will take you further in the dating process than just your Bumble fingers.
Georgia, do you guys have, I don't know if you do, but do you have, if they've run out of matches, do you suggest them to move to like Bumble BFF or Bumble Biz maybe?
Yeah, so it depends on what you're looking for, right? So certainly I would say if you run out of matches for date and you're still looking for that love connection, I would actually change your radius sometimes. So for instance, Yola, when you had changed it to be 1 to 2 miles, perhaps there's somebody that's still, within, call it, or when you change it to be like, half a mile actually, there might be somebody who, might be just a mile further away from you, and you might be willing to do that. So I'd say distance filters is probably one of the things. And then check out your filters. So if there's some things I would say that you're negotiable on that are not like things that you're firm on, stay firm on, but things that you're sort of negotiable on, I would take a look just to see the rest of their profile. So for instance, like maybe you're not, a cat lover, and they have a cat, but you'd be open to it if they met like all the other requirements.
Right.
I would say sort of look at that as well.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Maybe I forgot to do that. Okay, this question, and I think this goes back to like what all of us touched on self-love and boundaries. If it's clear that they don't really care, but you really like them and you still want to seem chill, how do you go about that?
So I would say if they're not interested, it's not going to go anywhere. So as much as it hurts to acknowledge that, right? Sometimes it's easier to live in our own like fantasy for a little bit, especially if you really like them, like you're excited, and it can feel really disappointing. Be easy on yourself. Like don't be really hard on yourself, right? Like a lot of times, actually most of the times when you're not a match with somebody or compatible, it actually has nothing to do with you. It's everything about that person, the way they were raised, their past experiences in relationships, what they think about themselves and their own relationship with themselves. And so don't take it personal, even though it is so easy during dating, right? To take this stuff personal, but really just taking a step back, being easy on yourself, being kind, maybe surround yourself around some girlfriends, hanging out, that kind of thing. But at some point, I do think it is important to draw those boundaries for yourself of, okay, I think it's time that I stop reaching out or I stop trying to get together if it's not receptive.
Yeah, I think we fantasize. You can fantasize and you can think, oh, they're going to come around. I'm going to win them over if I say this, or they see me like this. But to your point, Carla, if it comes to a point, if they're not being receptive, there's so many other options out there and great options. And if you're stuck on one person that doesn't want to be with you, you're going to miss out on someone that does want to be with you. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's important to be authentic from the start, right? Because if they're missing out and you're being that authentic whole self and you're bringing it exactly how you should be bringing it, then I feel like that's exactly, then it's not maybe compatible. But I think bringing it from the start, you can't have any regrets if it doesn't work out, because you know yourself, you have self-love, you're showing your whole self. And I mean, it's like a take it or leave it situation,
Absolutely. Well, Carla, Georgia, I could I'm sure all of us could keep talking about this for another hour, but we don't want to, be here all night. I would love to, which maybe we can do another one of these. Where can people connect with you? How can Georgia, especially for Bumble, where can they find Bumble, and where can they learn more about these badges?
Yeah, so I would say definitely Bumble. Follow Bumble on social media for sure, on Instagram. I personally, you can find me on LinkedIn as well as Bumble Biz. I am a Bumble Biz user.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
How about yourself, Carla? Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, you can connect with me on Instagram at I am Carla Romo. It's Carla with a C. And you can also check out my website. I've got a couple different freebies on there too, if you are interested in dating, that kind of thing. And that's at IamCarlaRomo.com.
Amazing. Thank you both for coming on. Everyone who's watching or listening, just know you can find love during Corona. You can, with the help of Bumble and their amazing tools. I mean, I didn't even have all these perks when I found my boyfriend. And I mean, Georgia, I will invite you, all of you, to the wedding.
I can't wait.
Yeah. Carla too.
Can't wait.
Okay. And Carla, everyone, do take advantage of Carla's, freebies and her Instagram. She shares a lot of great tips, and for even people in relationships as well. So definitely check them out. And you can check us out at I Suck at Life Podcast, and definitely check out Coven at Coven Mag on Instagram. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.
Bye.